I'm at the WASZP HQ with AMAC. He's going to show us how to put the new V2 rudder together. Let's get to it.
One of the first things we need to do is make sure there's no goop in the bottom here. This depends whether this doesn't matter whether it's coming straight out of the factory or it's been glued together before. We must not have any glue. Now zoom right in there and you can see mainly this one, the front one, 3 bolts in, and we just gently screw these in. You want to do them with your fingers to start with, and if one doesn't go in, take the other ones out and then try again. It will be a bit stiff, and some of these have a little bit of glue in it, so they will be hard to screw in, but as long as it's not really binding, it should be fine. Not putting any pressure on that at all. Put that one in and switch to a 4mm. Put that in. This one's gone in easily, but it may well have been difficult, and I would have had to unscrew the other ones. And then we're going to tighten these relatively tight. So these top ones, I'm putting a good amount of pressure on that. And that one, putting a good amount of pressure on it. And then this one a bit less because it's a smaller screw. So what we're going to do now is see if this fits in here. So simply just push that in, and if we're lucky, that'll just pop straight in. Now you see the pin has not popped out. That is a problem. And you can also see, if you come straight above, that the pin is slightly to the back. And this seems to be fairly common. It's also down a bit. Now we've erred on the side of making this tight so that we don't get a lot of slop. So let me just put it out. Right, it's clipped in a little bit, so I just need to push that down. So it had clipped in, so it's very close to getting right. But what I can do is loosen these 2 big ones off a bit and just push everything forward. So there's a little bit of slack if I loosen them off enough. There's just this tiny bit of slack, and I'll just give it a little tap forward. Now, when I do that, I can just feel a little slack there. So I'm just trying to get it as forward as it will go within the slight bit of movement we've got there, because the bolts are slightly smaller than the holes. Again. The other thing I can do is tighten the front one down a little bit more than the back one, and it'll actually bend the whole thing forward a bit. I'm not happy with the amount that has moved, so I'm just going to get a block of wood. I'm going to sit on the block of wood. I'm just going to give it a tap. And moved it a tiny little bit, so just a bit more. And we'll try that again. Hasn't really changed it, so what we will do, what you can do, but we don't want you to do this, is a little tap and it goes in. The problem with that is it means the pin's tight, and if the pin is tight, it can work its way back when you're sailing. And this has got a little bit of movement, and that pin can work its way back and be held in by the friction. So it's really important that this pin is loose, not tight like that one was. It's not bad, but it's just what we're going to do later. Once we've glued it, we're going to get something like a Dremel, and we're going to just take the tiniest bit of aluminium out of there just to be sure that's loose. Okay, I want to talk about mixing epoxy. This is really important that you watch this, because so many people get this wrong. Firstly, we are using full strength epoxy. This is a epoxy semi-glue, semi-resin. We're going to have to thicken a bit. I've got some fumed silica here for thickening it. Don't use microballoons, don't use Q-cells. They are just a filling agent. They don't add any strength. We need something that adds strength. The other thing which we just couldn't get today is the Loctite Marine 2-hour, which is a great option, which you don't need any filler. But this is a great resin, and we're gonna mix it. Now, the first thing is you can see both sides are coming out together. Super important that you don't have one big bubble in here, so just check that, because we need to get the ratios of this right. And if you don't get it right, we don't get a good. So I'm mixing probably a bit more than I need, and stick the thingy on wherever it goes, and we mix some sort of mixing device. Now, mixing is just as critical as the ratios. So what I'm doing is I'm scraping off the surface as I go, scraping it off the paddle pop stick and just mixing. When you think you've mixed enough, in about a minute's time, we won't go through the whole thing, but you're talking a couple of minutes of mixing. And you can do that with full strength epoxy. You can't do it with 5 minutes, and it's half the problem with 5 minutes. You can't mix it properly. And I'm just scraping off the surface and remixing. And I'm going to go on like this for another minute. So I mix this for about a minute and a half, and I've scraped and I've scraped and I've done everything hopefully right. And now I'm just going to put some fume silica in there and just get a screwdriver and put some on. Now, this does not go in before you mix the glue. If you do it before you mix the glue, before you mix the two parts, I should say, you will find that the two parts do not mix properly. So the glue's got to be mixed first, and then you mix the fume silica in. And again, I reiterate, not microglues, not Q-cells, not stuff that just makes a putty for filling. This is a glue mix. And getting it fairly thick. I don't have to mix it all in if I don't want to, but it looks like I've just got about the right amount. As you see, I don't have a lot of glue. And now we've got a nice consistency. It's not dripping at all. It's going to do the right things. So now we're just going to put a little bit of Loctite on the screws. This is not really to stop the screws coming out. It's more to stop the epoxy getting onto the threads. I prefer the blue 243, but this 263 is okay. If you use a 263, just make sure you don't put too much on it. I'm just going to put a little bit on the end of the screw and then screw it into the hole to spread it so that we have the surfaces nicely covered with the Loctite. Do that for each one separately. We're going to take our bulb and we're just going to spread some glue on it. Now we're going to try and not get the glue into those holes. It doesn't matter if you get a tiny bit, but try not, and some will squeeze in, but we just want to hopefully get this surface. I've not got a lot on there. You can see I didn't mix much glue and I'm not using even a quarter of it. A lot of this is going to squeeze out, that's the plan. And so we've just got some glue on like that. So I put some screws in with that, and then try to make sure that we get that lined up. Again, gently screwing these in with your fingers. You may need a little bit more than your fingers because there might be a little bit of leftover glue in the threads, but not forcing it, just really gently putting the 3 screws in. And again, as I said before, if one starts to bind, you've got to take the other ones out and get them to. So you can see there's a nice amount of glue that is squeezed out fairly evenly. And we're going to do it the same amount as we did previously, which is a little bit tighter on the front. And This one's not quite as tight. Do not get acetone on your tips. They may become illegal. And there we have it, ready to go. So we've now glued it together and we're going to recheck that it fits properly. Now I've tightened it up maybe a little bit more than we had before, so it's a possibility. Now you heard a little click, but the pin hasn't come out. And we can probably give it a whack and it doesn't come out. Now I don't want to loosen this at all, so my preference, rather than loosening the bolts, is I'm going to actually take a wee bit of aluminium out of this. So what we're going to do is take a little diamond tip Dremel, and our videographer is going to hold it for me if you can, and I'm just going to fairly slow speed and just take the tiniest amount out of here. Now I've probably taken less than a 20th of a mil off there. So I'm just going to keep doing that. I want to keep the hole nice and round until this pin clicks in with just hand pressure. It's so close, but it's just not quite doing it. And you're all going to be saying, oh, why can't you do this in the factory? Well, a lot of reasons why we don't, and we'll get to that on another time. Don't have to do every repeat of this. And there she is. That was only. So we're just going to take the old webbing out of the rudder box. Simply come in close here. I'll just get a bit of knife and just get myself something to grab onto, and I'll just twist it out. And out she comes. Easy. And same at the top. And out she comes. All out. So now we can just put these in dry and see if the rudder just goes in without any getting rid of any more glue, and we've found that most times it does. See if this goes in. And it's beautiful, so we don't have to worry about taking any glue out. Now, if you're doing this on the beach and you want to go sailing and you're using the 2-hour epoxy, you can probably do this after you go sailing. Leave these just unglued so that you can go sailing and glue them in later. So anyway, we know that it fits. Take that out. And grab some contact adhesive. Now normally contact adhesive is you put it on both surfaces, you let it semi-dry, and then you flip the two together. We're going to do it a little differently because it's better to just have it wet so that this presses in all the way properly. So I'm just going to put a little bit in the top here, a little bit there. Not really trying to get it full coverage, just enough to make sure it stays in whenever you take the rudder out, really. It's not like the epoxy we did on the bulb, which is really important. It's really important that strong. This is just really to hold it there while whenever you have the rudder out. So you don't want too much, so it squeezes it out everywhere. Now on the back one, I'm actually going to put it on the plastic itself. So at the top there's a slightly roughened bit. I'll put it in the middle as well. You don't really need a brush to do this, anything will do. Try not to get it too globby, so unlike what I'm doing. Anyway, we will put that in that way. Put this one in, the straight edge at the top, the angled one at the bottom. Put that in. And then put our rudder in to hold them there. And that needs to sit for pretty much overnight because there is. So we've now got the rudder in the rudder box. This is all together. There's one more little thing we've got to do is take some electrical tape. It's about 2 centimeters long, and I'm just going to put it on the side where the pin is not, just down to the join there, and push it in between and this will just take out the slack between this fitting and the aluminium vertical. That's better. Now we have a lot less wobble. And we're done. We can go sailing.